All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our workshop entitled Dealing Holistically with Dementia in an Elder Law Practice. We are so happy that you've decided to join us today, and we can't wait to provide you with this exclusive information and resources that will give you a deeper understanding of us and our services. My name is Emily, and I'm the Marketing Director for Clinkscales Elder Law Practice. We have our main office here in Hayes, and we have our other office in Wichita, and we do serve clients and families throughout the state of Kansas. I would like to invite you all to type any questions that you may have in the chat box that's located at the bottom of your screen throughout the entire presentation. And then at the end of the workshop, we will address any of those questions or concerns that you may have. We are very excited to have two presenters today for an exclusive workshop that we've never shared before with the public. So without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to our attorney and president, Randy Clinkscales, to get us started.
Emily, thank you. I am really happy to have Jill Wechsler join us today. Jill is a care coordinator in our office, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Let me just kind of give you a little bit of background about this workshop. Jill and I actually did a presentation at our symposium, Jill, a couple of weeks ago or so. And in preparing for that, while that was really designed for healthcare professionals, I really thought that Jill had a lot of really good practical information that I, would like our families to know. People who are dealing with Alzheimer's, people who are dementia, people who are in the midst of all of that, people who are concerned about it. I just think the information was really valuable. So that's really what prompted us to do this today. So again, it's a little bit different. We're going to focus a little bit more than I ordinarily focus on in terms of the legal side of it. But today you're going to discover ways to care for and communicate when dealing with dementia, and how to protect yourself and your goals with important legal documents, how to pay for care, and how to stay at home. And part of that staying at home is really wrapped up in the care for and communicate with somebody when dealing with dementia. So this is for you if you or a loved one has a diagnosis of dementia, or like me, you're just concerned about maybe one day developing dementia, or that someone close to you could be developing dementia in the future. If you're wanting to learn ways to communicate effectively, and again, that's a part of the draw to me for this workshop, because I have so many families I work with that have dementia, and how to work with them and how to help them be better equipped. If you're wanting to keep a loved one at home that has dementia, and that's a huge goal for so many of our clients. If you're a caregiver who's getting overwhelmed, and I will just share with you, every caregiver is going to get overwhelmed at some point in their journey, and maybe it's just for a while until they get the right tools. But it's don't feel like you're a bad person because you get overwhelmed. This is for you if you don't have a legal plan in place that addresses the impact of dementia. And then one of the common questions they get called, in fact, we've got a meeting later on today, if you're wondering how to pay for long-term care if that's necessary, and if you're concerned about losing everything to long-term care costs. So when I have a meeting, one of the things I like to do is Jill is going to be in that meeting, and we're going to talk with the family. And at the end of the first half of the meeting, I asked them, what are your goals, or if you could wave a magic wand, what would it be that you would like to achieve? What would it be that you wish that we could make happen for you? And it is to be able to care for a loved one at home and find assistance with caregiving, to be sure they have a legal plan in place that specifically addresses the unique issues of dementia, how to pay for care without going broke, and protection of their property and income for their spouse, their children, or others. And then probably the big overriding thing, if you want to capsulize that into one statement, is just having peace of mind that everything is going to be okay and that they're not alone. This is one of our early dementia cases that we had. This is from Tad, where he said, I never could have done this without you. And so the note that he wrote us was, when my wife was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I tried to care for her myself. My son, a doctor, told me I had to get help or we would end up with two sick people. My banker recommended Clinkscales. Clinkscales helped me care for myself and my wife. They helped me monitor my care and my wife's care. If I ever had a question, I just had to pick up the phone. So who am I? I'm an attorney in Hayes. We also have offices in Wichita. I have two partners. My focus is on people with aging and chronic care issues, protection of assets from long-term care. I've been practicing for over 40 years, but the last 18 years have really been the best when I transitioned over to elder care. So why am I so passionate? And that's really because I got into this taking care of my grandmother, and this is my grandmother and I learned a lot from my grandmother, and I had the highest regard for my grandmother and really wanted to carry out her wishes. And so I probably gave her more latitude than I would have liked. But what I learned from her was that the most important thing for her was to stay independent. She wanted to stay out of the nursing home. She had a saying that, honey, I know one day I'm going to have to go to a nursing home. I just don't want to know about it. And so she, her purpose behind that was that she was, as long as she was cognitive and could make her own decisions, she was willing to take some risk. And my grandmother's background was that her mother actually had dementia, early onset dementia, and walked her through that journey, which was very, very difficult for my grandmother. She wanted to protect her assets to maintain the lifestyle that she wanted. And then I learned in taking care of my grandmother that I had to have assistance. I really didn't know what I was doing. I think sometimes lawyers think that they have all the answers. I found very quickly that I didn't. And so I got a care coordinator involved in helping me and guiding me through the journey with my grandmother. The other reason I'm so passionate is about 70% of what we call life care clients in our office have dementia. It's virtually weekly. We're going to be meeting with a family that is dealing with dementia, and some common issues like how to pay for care, caregiver burnout. But I'm also very involved in the Alzheimer's Association, and I just know it's the most complex in terms of caregiving. Alzheimer's is. So, but the journey can be wonderful. You just have to have a plan and have to be flexible with that plan. So, Jill, so who are you?
Hi, my name is Jill Wechsler, and I am a care coordinator here at Clinkscales. I've been here for 6 years now. I started my journey in long-term care 15 years ago. I was a social worker at Brookside Retirement Community in Overbrook, Kansas. Did the admissions and discharge and did that for about 9 years. So I moved back home to Hayes, where I grew up, and found this job. And I just really passionate about what I do because it's just unique to the area. There's no one else, I don't know, in Kansas, I think that does what we do here. Our life care plans are unique to having care coordinators and who are social workers and nurses that go out and support and visit our families, whether they're in the nursing home or in long-term care facilities, hospitals, assisted livings, wherever they're at in their own homes, and just feel like we're helping families through very difficult times. There's so much out there that is confusing and misinformation, and when dealing with dementia, it's just really important to have someone to support you and help you figure out the best way to communicate with those people that are really struggling.
Yeah, let me just add, I mean, she's not going to talk about it, but one of the things that is valuable for Jill, for me, is that, and she's going to kind of get into the communication skills. Jill has undergone some extensive training in dementia care. And in fact, not only does she work with our families that are dealing with dementia, many times we end up with a client that has dementia in a non-memory care unit. And so a lot of times Jill is advocating for them on and teaching that facilities some communication tools and behavioral alternatives. So I think that I always like to kid that at the end of a case that I may get pretty good marks, but Jill gets excellent marks from the client. So and I think that speaks highly. She makes a real bond with clients, as do all the care coordinators, and that's really special to families. And so, again, I appreciate what she does. Here's a family that I wanted to share with you. This was a family that came to us, and the comment that they wrote. Let me just read it. My dad would have lost everything financially had it not been for Randy and his team using their expertise to divert what Randy termed the approaching train wreck. What Randy did for our family was create a life care plan for my mom with a goal of keeping her safe and protecting as many of their assets as he could. We used our social services expertise, which would be the care coordinator, the legal services, and all the other services that came with this plan. It was an investment that my dad and my sister and I shared. Had we not done it, I'm convinced my father would not have his house and the small farm he grew up on. The plan paid for itself 100 times over. If you're an individual wondering how you will one day respectfully care for your aging parents, consider checking into this law firm. And I want to pause for just a moment, because one thing that is important to me is that last statement about respectfully caring for aging parents. And again, I think that's something that Jill brings to the table and helps clients do that. So kind of where we are is a diagnosis of dementia does not have to devastate your family or your finances. And so today, what you're going to discover is how to care for and communicate with somebody with dementia, and how to care for yourself as a caregiver. We're going to talk about the legal planning that you need to do because of dementia, and then how to pay for care without going broke. So our first one that we're going to talk about is how to care for and communicate with somebody with dementia. And I like to start with this because I think this may be the base, if you will, to planning. And it's so important if you have a good base it gives you a lot more alternatives. Versus a situation that's totally out of control, where basically we're firefighters. And so again, if we can get involved early in the process, we're certainly not going to stop dementia, but we can certainly stop the deterioration of the caregiver. And I think that's really what I always tell many caregivers, they're the gatekeeper. And the better they take care of themselves, the better they're going to take care of the person with dementia. So I'm going to give an example here, and then I want to have Jill talk about some learning points. So this is Mr. and Mrs. Smith came into our office with their daughter, Alice, and he had been diagnosed with dementia. During the meeting, there was a lot of arguing with Mr. Smith by his wife and his daughter, saying things like, "Dad, remember we've gone over this," and things like that. They're at the point where he cannot be left alone. He has sundowners, and he's not as a result, Mrs. Smith is not sleeping very well. She quit her job, even though she was healthy. She quit her sorority. The daughter lives many miles away, but actually the daughter is the one who set up the phone call because or our meeting, because she saw how much deterioration mom was exhibiting, trying to take care of Mr. Smith. So they want to keep him at home, but their solution is that Mrs. Smith is going to be providing all the care, with Alice giving relief when she can, which was about once a month. So when our got involved, one of the suggestions that we implemented was we got Mrs. Smith back to work. We found some respite care. We got senior companions. We taught her some caregiver tips. The result was that Mrs. Smith's health improved. She had an improved relationship with Mr. Smith. One of the things that it's important to have tools, but it's important to use the tools. And I always talk about being willing to accept help. So, quote from Alice, "You helped save mom and allowed us to keep dad at home much longer. Plus, we saved thousands of dollars." So, Jill, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, I know you put together a slideshow about until all the pieces fit together. And the background is that when we're dealing with dementia, we've got health issues, we've got caregiver issues, we've got financial issues, we've got legal issues. We have a lot of that. So, and I think you're going to try to put together some of the pieces, particularly the healthcare side. So I know you've got some ground rules. So do you want to go over those?
Sure. Yeah, we came up with 5 ground rules to consider when you're working with somebody who has dementia, and just feel like they're pretty helpful to all of our families when it's a new diagnosis or an old diagnosis, or just something that has been gradually affecting the person. First one is we cannot change that person. It's a brain disorder that is shaping who they have become. And then you'll hear families many times saying, they're just not the same person. And it's 100% true. They have changed. This disease is changing who they are. And so what we can do is accommodate the behaviors that are coming with it, whether that's just forgetfulness or misplacing things, or just anger, out of control behaviors. We can accommodate those and try to work with them. The only thing that we can really change is how we respond to them, how our reaction to what's going on with them. So I think that's really important to keep in mind that, like in the example that Randy was giving, they're like, don't you remember that we talked about this already, Dad? Well, no, he doesn't remember. And so just bringing that up can be pretty frustrating for the person because they don't truly remember having that conversation. And we all hate being told when we're wrong. We all hate being told when when we don't remember something. So it's just really important to remember um, that you are dealing with something that's changing who they are. Um, the second ground rule is to check with their physician first because if you have somebody who's, they've been diagnosed with dementia, but then all of a sudden they're just really having a rough time. They're up at night wandering, they're leaving the house. There may be something more health-wise going on with them. We've seen many times where an infection, a urinary tract infection or upper respiratory infection or something is going on that is causing their dementia symptoms to be blown out of proportion, abnormal to what they normally are. So it's always good to, when you have something like that happen, to check with the physician, make sure they do a UA, they test their blood to see if there's something off center with that too. So you always want to rule that out first.
Yeah, and again, I think that's I know Jill, she sees red flags, particularly if there's been a very rapid change in dementia. Why is that? What happened there? And maybe it mean I know that even when I was taking care of my grandmother, the care coordinator actually would write out questions for me to talk to my doctor about my grandmother. And so it's sometimes just empowering the client to go back and say, is this the right diagnosis? Is there something else that's causing it? Is it, again, like Jill said, is it medications? Is it UTI?
And pain too. That's something I think we don't
Yeah.
realize, that sometimes they're up wandering around because sitting hurts or it feels better to have that movement. So addressing pain issues is something that we really try to look as one of the significant triggers for behaviors. So the third ground rule is, what is the purpose behind the behavior? Every behavior has a purpose. Those living with dementia cannot always tell us what they need or what they want. So you kind of have to really be an investigator, figure out what it is. Always consider that, it could be they're just looking for the bathroom. They need, or they're hungry and they don't know where to go to find food. Or they're bored. Those things are all could be triggers that are causing a behavior that you're seeing. But you just always need to try to figure out what they're trying to tell you, because they can't tell you at all, or they're taking all their clothes off out of the closet and they're packing them up. Well, they're bored. They're used to staying busy and cleaning house and doing something. So maybe we can find something to keep them busy when those times come. It's just really important to know the person, to know who they are before, were before, what kind of work they did, what kind of habits they had, what kind of things they enjoyed in life, and then catering to that. Each person's individual. You're going to have to deal with each person individually based off of who they are and their personality.
And I just I think in this Jill's slideshow, I think this is the one that surprised me the most. I never thought about that some of the behaviors have a purpose that may be disguised, or not maybe, is disguised, and somebody, I think it kind of goes back to what Jill just said. If you're a caregiver, even if your loved one is not in the home, you still have a role to play in advocating for them. Maybe they were a farmer, maybe, whatever it was sometimes that really can help explain why the behavior is that it is. So,
yeah, we even get down to like the shifts they used to work. If they were a nurse and they always worked the night shift, then you might have somebody who likes to really be up at nighttime. So that's where getting to know them really comes in handy. Let's see, ground rule number 4, behavior is triggered. All behaviors are triggered and occur for some reason. The root to changing a behavior is disrupting the pattern that we create, and trying a different approach is vital in changing, how things are, what's going on. So I don't know, some of the behaviors, the repetitiveness, they're trying to tell you something, they're kind of stuck on that, repeat mode. If you just join in on the conversation and try to, get them off that repeat, sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes they just need to know that you're listening to them, and they've been heard, because we all love to be heard. We all love to know that somebody's listening to us and trying to accommodate what's going on for us. So I always joke that you might see me in a facility having a great conversation that nobody else can understand, with somebody who has dementia, but I'm just trying to pick out words that they say, and repeat it to them so they know that I'm there. I'm giving them my undivided attention, and that what they're saying matters, even though I may not really understand what they're trying to tell me, because it's word salad, or just really not able to understand it. But as a caregiver, um, I also had my old boss used to ask, if somebody got hit or something like that, they wouldn't say, well, what was the resident doing? They'd say, what did you do wrong? Because there's always a way to try to avoid getting hit. You either startled them, you didn't announce what you were doing, you didn't come in and get eye level. There's a lot that you knew they were already agitated, and you're trying to get them to do something they don't want to do. So just looking at different approaches for that, maybe different people. That's where, as a caregiver, it is good to have backup, to have a tag team, somebody that you can call over to come sit with somebody, give you guys some breaks. So all those there's lots of different things that we can try, and what works one day is probably not going to work the next. And that works with one person doesn't always work with another person. So the key to managing those difficult behaviors is definitely being creative, being flexible, getting to know them, and just reevaluating always, what they're trying to communicate to you. The one size does not fit all, absolutely, with dementia. So there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days. And just what our goal here as caregivers is just to help families come up with the best plan, and educate them on different things regarding, communicating with our family members that have dementia, and getting them the support that they need.
And Jill, something you said there that's important about one size doesn't fit all. Every dementia case is different. They just are. They're all individuals, and I think it's so important that we, in our office, that we recognize that, and that's okay. That we can't fit them into a peg. We have to treat them individually.
Right.
So, Jill, anything you want to add to that before I go on to?
No.
Okay, so just for Mrs. Smith, just some tips that we talked about with her is don't argue, try to agree, rather than reason, try to divert or change the subject. Try not to lecture, instead reassure. Avoid the R word, remember, and instead reminisce. Don't say I told you, instead you might want to repeat and regroup. Don't say you can't, try to tell our loved ones what she or he can do. Try not to command or demand, and instead ask or model behavior. So a good one there is like eating. A lot of times if you'll just sit down and eat with them, that'll kind of cue them to copy your behavior, versus trying to say, Dad, it's time to eat, and so forth. So don't condescend, instead courage or praise. Don't enforce, instead reinforce. And this is my rule, and I want to talk about this for just a minute. Respect the person with dementia. Remember, they are in the room. feelings can be hurt and levels of understanding may vary from time to time. Don't talk as if they're not there. And so, Jill, I want to be real careful about client confidentiality, but I know you and I had a kind of a tough case last week. Do you want to talk some of the communication issues?
Sure. In our first meetings, we usually try to focus a little bit on what's going on healthcare wise, and we ask the whole family to participate. And many times the family members will start talking, you ask them about their health, and then they transfer over to where the big problem is. So that kind of is what happened here too. We were talking about healthcare issues that are going on with the family, and it just kept pushing back to the one with dementia, and that person was there with us, and the things that were being said about the problems that they were having, you could tell on her face that it was really making her sad and feeling bad and upset. And so I just want to say that Randy did an awesome job of supporting her and, kind of communicating that, you know, that, the things that were being said were out of love and out of, fear for her safety and things like that. I just felt like you did a really good job, Randy, on that one.
Well, and again, I even though, and I know in this case it was, short-term memory issues and well, she'll forget it 10 minutes from now. I don't care. She, that moment she remembered it. So it's important to me that we treat the person with dementia with as much care as possible. So if I may, I'm going to go on to this. This is a one where our care coordinator in Wichita was working with a family. And I want to jump down to the second paragraph. And Kayla, the care coordinator, has been immensely supportive while navigating the mysteries of obtaining quality home health for my wife. This support is priceless to me. Qualifying for the home care has enabled us to stay in our home while still providing care services to my wife. So again, I think that's just, they were at the point where they were ready to place her, and I think just equipping them is so important.
Right. So Randy, what should our participants do if they're concerned about communicating and caring for someone with dementia?
Well, what we'd like for you to do is, if you're dealing with this, is to we're going to send out the information about scheduling a strategy session with our office, and we want to explore what tools are available. And again, I want to emphasize a little bit. Jill's slideshow is about an hour long by in and of itself, and so we just touched on a small segment of it. At the strategy session, we're going to help you find resources, and then we'll start implementing that strategy right away. So again, working with somebody like Jill is so important to get your life in order.
So Randy, what is the legal planning a family needs to do because of dementia?
So now we're transitioning to the boring part here. This is important. Contrary to what a lot of folks think, nobody has the power to act for you without having the proper documentation. So my wife has no power to transact business for me or to make healthcare decisions. And so, my argument with my clients is that they say, well, this is so hard to decide. And I tell them, well, you decide or somebody else will. And so you have the power to say who's going to act in your behalf. You can express your wishes. I have strong healthcare wishes about what kind of healthcare I want and don't want. Those documents decide what can be done for you. The planning needs to include financial and healthcare powers of attorneys, and either a will or a trust, or perhaps a living will, and HIPAA releases and so forth. but your investment could end up saving you thousands of dollars. And so let me turn to one here. Mrs. Jackson lived in the southeast part of Kansas, and we were contacted by her daughter. She had ended up in the hospital, and the hospital would not discharge her unless she was placed in some type of nursing home. She owned a home. She has two daughters. One is disabled, and the other non-disabled daughter, Betty, is the one who contacted our office. It is now trying to make decisions. Unfortunately, in the case, mom has lost capacity, and there is a very limited power of attorney that does not allow for gifting. Because of the limited power of attorney, the house cannot be transferred to the daughter and will now be lost to Medicaid. And so again, I don't want to get into the weeds here, but there is an exception to the Medicaid prohibition about transferring away property. And if you transfer away property to a disabled child, and again, I won't go into the definition of what that means, this is an adult child, then that transfer is not going to be penalized. And the key here is the family waited too long to take action. And let me defend Betty for a moment. She had actually been to see a general practitioner attorney and just didn't get elder law advice. And so she thought she had done everything that she needed to do, but once they got into a bind, then she was kind of stuck. Now, I will tell you, we were able to save half the value of the home, but in theory, we could have saved the whole home if we'd had a good, strong power of attorney. And then I want to share another one with you, and this is kind of the opposite end. So this is Mr. Lundgren. They actually called us from a neurologist office. He had been diagnosed with early cognitive decline, and the doctor said, you need to call our office. And so he was just in his early 60s. And so we met with them, kind of an interesting meeting. They were, clearly very upset. He actually had felt something was wrong. That's what prompted him to go to the doctor. When I talked to him, he said, I want to stay in control, but I want to be sure my wife and my land are protected. So he's still farming, still active farmer. He just found all of a sudden some things that were very easy for him became very complicated. In fact, some things he couldn't do, like figure out fertilizer percentages. So I met with him. We set up very broad powers of attorneys. We put his land into an irrevocable trust. However, we set it up so he'll continue to farm it. We modified or set up his healthcare power of attorney to reflect his wishes about dementia. And then we talked with his agent, which was his wife and kids, about what his care wishes were. So even though it's going to be several years before Mr. Lundgren ever needs health assistance, his goals are achieved through his plan that's set forth in his document. His land's protected. He remains in control. We set it up so that if at some point he cannot be in control, his wife still has power to further protect their resources. His care goals are protected, and that takes a lot of pressure and guilt off his family when they have to do something. So again, what actions do you need to take if you're facing dilemma, if you're facing dementia, or if you're concerned about developing dementia? Then we want to meet with you for a strategy session And again, compare the two cases. Mr. Lundgren's case, we had a lot more planning opportunities. We're able to do a lot more. So act as soon as you can while capacity is not an issue. Express your goals in legal documents. But regardless of where you are on the journey or where your loved one is, don't give up. There are some solutions.
And Randy, I know a lot of questions come up about how do we pay for care?
Yeah.
Can you cover that now?
Yeah, and I will share with you, Jill, that's probably the number one reason initially why people call our office in the course of our meeting. A lot of times, you know, the goals change, but how to pay for dementia care is shocking for a lot of people. I know you and I are seeing nursing home care costs. Do you have a guess, Jill?
Oh, about 6,000 be an
Yeah.
average, yeah, a month.
Yeah, and you know, we have a couple in Wichita that are in a place called Larksfield, and both of them are there, and they're paying between the two of them $21,000 a month. So it did not take very long to go through all their resources, and so and I know for my purposes, I just figure we're looking at $6,000 to $7,000 a month to kind of get through it. So how to pay for care. You can make the decision on how to pay for care. You know, I want you to know you don't have to go broke if you need dementia care. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to use government benefits to pay for care. And I'm going to do this all through examples. So here's a case where we use planned resources to pay for care. And this is actually where we use both Medicare and a long-term care policy. And Mr. Johnson had a stroke. He was in the hospital and they wanted to discharge him. The Johnsons were from a small community and they had a nursing home, but it was not a skilled facility. Excuse me. And so they have some assets I've set forth there. They had some long-term care insurance of $200 a day for 3 years. The care costs were going to exceed that on a monthly basis. Mrs. Johnson contacted our office. And so one of the things that we did in that case was we got permission from Mrs. Johnson to have Mr. Johnson discharged to a skilled facility, which allowed for Medicare to pay for that care there. And then we worked for a plan for Mr. Johnson to come home using not only Medicare, but the long-term care policy. And we also used the long-term care policy to make some home improvements. The result of that is that Mr. Johnson's care at the facility was paid for by Medicare. Most important to me was that he did get skilled care and he got better. And some of the assistance was paid for by long-term care, by the long-term care policy. I will tell you that he was able to stay at home and is still at home. And Mr. Johnson, frankly, has bounced back enough that he's independent and does not need a lot of assistance. So we were able to protect the assets. We were able to get him good care, make sure he got better. You know, that's so important with a stroke person. And then this is another one. This is a proactive family. Their children contacted us. Their parents had purchased some long-term care insurance that was only, I think $3,200 a month coverage. And so they were concerned about that. And I won't go through this, but basically there's a law out there called the Pension Protection Act that we were able to convert some of their IRA into a long-term care. Convert it into a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. The key there is that with their traditional long-term care policy, if they don't use it, they lose everything they paid on it. With this policy that we showed them how to get, and we don't sell it, we help them find it. If they have a claim on the policy, all it does is reduces the death benefit of that life insurance policy. So it's not a use it or lose it kind of a. And the second part of it is that they don't have annual premiums like they did before. And the third part of it is that we were able to use IRA money and do this tax-free without any tax implications. So they were really, really happy that they could drop their traditional life insurance policy, that they picked up this life insurance policy with the rider. And by the way, the rider paid $7,000 a month versus the $3,200. And then finally, I want to talk to you about Medicaid, and this is the Goforth's family. He had been diagnosed with Lewy bodies dementia. Mrs. Goforth had been diagnosed with Lewy bodies. She's been discharged to a nursing home, paying $8,000 a month. Assets include Mr. Goforth's retirement of $300,000, a joint account of $60,000. He has Social Security benefits of $1,500, and her Social Security is $800. They were told by the nursing home they would need to spend down all the resources before Medicaid would help. Mr. Goforth would need to use all of his income to pay for her care, and Medicaid would put a lien on their home. Mrs. Goforth was worried his wife would not get good care if she went on Medicaid. So our solution was we used some Medicaid tools and legal documents that allowed us to restructure Mr. and Mrs. Goforth's assets. Again, we had a really good power of attorney in this case. We were able to qualify Mrs. Goforth for Medicaid. Importantly, Mr. Goforth was able to keep all of the assets, his home, his retirement, and Mrs. Goforth's income to support himself. So the result was he did not have to go broke. He has enough income to take care of himself, even though Mrs. Goforth is on Medicaid. There's no lien on the home, and he can sell it without losing it to Medicaid. And he was able to keep his retirement. And then our care coordinator is going to be monitoring his wife's care and advocating for her, giving peace of mind to Mr. Goforth. I want to talk just a little bit about another alternative if Mrs. Goforth had not needed to go to a nursing home. Sometimes, if Mr. Goforth was a veteran, we would be able to tap into veterans benefits. If we were applying for Mr. Goforth, it could be up to $2,200 a month. If it's for Mrs. Goforth, it's about $1,100, $1,200 a month. I want to bring that up because I had a case yesterday where the client is in her late 80s, but she was married to a World War II veteran who passed away. And she had a really low income and has had really low income for quite a while. The point is that because he was a World War II veteran, she was entitled to quite a bit of income to increase her income. And so, boy, I anytime I see somebody where they or their spouse served in the military we really want to take a hard look at that, because as an example, in this case I looked at yesterday, if she wanted to bring in some home care, we could get a lot of that reimbursed through the VA. So we just want to, we really like to earmark those files to watch if they get into the area where we could possibly apply for VA. And we've been working with the VA a lot more the last couple of years, and I think they've improved their timeliness on claims and processing them. So if you're trying to pay for dementia care, we want to schedule a strategy session as soon as possible. We want to explore all the funding resources. Again, I keep saying this over and over again, get in place strong powers of attorney or other estate planning documents. And the goal is to find, get, and pay for good care without going broke. Jill, I just want one thing I forgot to cover with you is particularly let's talk about the healthcare power of attorney
Mhm.
and how important that is.
Sure. It's really important to have somebody in place that can make decisions for you, whether you're in crisis and can't make a decision, or you have dementia and you can no longer make those decisions for yourself. It's just vital that you have identified somebody in your family or a neighbor. It just depends on who you really trust, to have that document in place so that they can communicate with your caregivers, with your doctor's office, with the hospitals, and help make decisions for you. It's really important to have like a living will or do not resuscitate order, and to have those hard conversations with those people that you have designated, so that they know what your wishes are too. I think those are really hard conversations to have sometimes when you're really healthy and you're doing okay, but it's important that they know whether or not you want to be tube fed for a little while, or would you want to be resuscitated if your heart stops? How about going on dialysis? Those are kind of the things that as caregiver or care coordinators, we like to talk to our clients about, just so that their families, that conversation starts up.
Yeah, and again, it's important to have that conversation much sooner than later
Yes.
because of capacity issues.
When I think too, Randy, like you with Alzheimer's and dementia, you have certain things that you want your family to do, if something comes up or you do have dementia or whatever. But you can tell them, based on your abilities, what you want to have done.
This is I like to share this slide because this is a woman that came to us, Pat, in a very difficult time. They had moved to Kansas. She and her husband, he had dementia. She was trying to move near some family that was going to help her out. Unfortunately, the dementia really got difficult, and just her husband was not manageable. So Pat was originally a very angry client. She was very bitter at the hand that she had been dealt. But we worked with her for quite a while, and she actually became a very good friend of our office, and became very, very close to us. And she wrote this nice note after her husband. I think she wrote this after her husband had passed, but she said, "My husband needed nursing home care. You guided me through the process. Your care coordinators made sure my husband was getting good care. I highly recommend you because you're always there for your clients and will guide them through everything that goes on, things we never expected to go through." And I think that's the thing I want to emphasize with Pat is just, it's just things that she never expected to go through. Jill has, as they say, this is not her first rodeo, and has been through this so often and continues to go through it, both on business level and even on a personal level. So I think that's important. So far you've discovered that if you're dealing with dementia, it's important to care for the caregiver. It's important to have and use good communication tools. It's important to know how and access community resources. There are special, specific legal documents you absolutely need to protect yourself, your family, and your wishes. And there are ways to plan for possible care costs, and the plan will protect your spouse, your family, and your assets. You can pay for care with private resources, or if necessary, you can have access to government programs, but you don't have to go broke because of dementia. Again, I want to, before I leave that point, you have to be careful that you don't do anything that would jeopardize your ability to get on different government programs. And there's look back periods and transfer issues and that sort of thing. But with proper care and planning, you can delay or avoid the nursing home, allowing you to stay at home longer. So I changed this slide earlier today because I think it's, I typically I would say proper planning with expert directs you on ways to stay at home. But to me, it's proper planning with a team of experts that will direct you on the ways to stay at home, to protect your family and preserve your assets from the devastation of dementia. And I just know that I rely on our team to help my family navigate the system. So how do you make this happen? Again, we're talking about strategies for dealing with dementia diagnosis, the different things we need to address. How does this work? We're going to schedule, those of you who are interested, we're going to schedule a short phone call with you to first figure out whether or not this is something that we can help you with. And if it is, then we will schedule a 60 to 90 minute meeting in person or by Zoom or by telephone with me or one of my two partners. And at that meeting, we're going to discuss what's going on with dementia, or whether maybe you're just concerned about developing dementia and you want to develop a plan that will protect your resources. We'll discuss your financial and legal needs should your loved one require care. I want to review your current plan, and then I want to establish what your long-term goals are. If you're dealing with dementia, I want you to visit with Jill, one of the other care coordinators. I want her or them to be able to give me a good handle about where we are on the dementia journey. And then I'm going to answer any unique questions that your situation has. So at the end of our time together, you're going to have a better understanding of the journey and what steps need to be implemented. We will analyze your current financial situation and explore ways to protect your resources and pay for care. And certainly I want to have a good analysis of your current legal plan, but really what I want is a better clarity of your issues and goals. And then I'll let you know the exact amount of what the investment will be to achieve those goals. After our meeting, number one is the most important point. You have to decide to get started. Jill did an assessment yesterday, yesterday or the day before, with a client who met with me 9 years ago. And luckily nothing happened for 9 years. And she came back in and asked us to work with her with a life care plan. But the point is you got to get started. We'll then draft a summary of what you have right now. We'll prepare all the legal documents that you need. We'll meet again to sign those documents, begin the process of putting the plan in place, like transferring property, getting home care if you're dealing with dementia, getting Jill involved. We'll work together on other tools and steps. And again, if you're dealing with a chronic illness or an aging issue that requires assistance, we'll have you meet with one of the care coordinators. So typically this kind of session would be $650, but because you attended today, that session is free. Sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? We've got 6 spots reserved in the next 4 weeks. Otherwise, we have to push you out further than that. Here's my personal guarantee. After that meeting, you're going to know more than you do today. You're going to have an analysis of what happens if you do nothing. And you're going to realize there are options available to guide and protect you and your family, which is probably the most important thing. And your time's not going to be wasted. Call this number 877-325-8040 for the strategy session, or Emily's going to send out this Survey Monkey link. And if you do, we'll send you a copy of a book that we wrote, A Guide to Alzheimer's Care, and a written summary of our recommendation. So again, the free strategy session, an analysis, the written report on how to achieve your goals, and a guide to Alzheimer's care. So Emily, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we do have one question. Can we come to your office if we've already worked with a different lawyer in the past?
Yes, we would like for you to bring with you whatever, if you have a current plan with that attorney, we would like you to bring that with you. But I will share with you that many clients come to us as a referral from another attorney.
Perfect. We do have one more great question here. It says, while the home can be protected for the community spouse in the division of assets process, how do you avoid Medicaid putting a lien on the home for the nursing home care being provided to the facility spouse?
So yeah, it's kind of a technical answer, but basically before we apply for Medicaid, we transfer the home and any other income producing property to the well spouse. And so federal law says that they cannot put a lien on that home as long as the surviving, the well spouse is in that home. But again, the idea here is right now we have run into the issue that if the property is held in joint tenancy, we have caught Kansas Medicaid putting a lien on the home. So again, we transfer the home away before we apply for Medicaid, and that prevents them from putting a lien against it. Now, if the person with Medicaid dies, and then the well spouse dies, there's a chance that Medicaid could file a claim in the estate of the well spouse that died. I guess they're no longer the well spouse, but they can't put a lien against the home because it was not in the name of the Medicaid recipient. I know it's kind of a technical question, but that's how we get around that rule, that issue.
Perfect. Thank you so much for addressing that question, Randy, and thank you so much for asking that question. I don't see any more coming through the chat box at the moment, but please feel free to add your question now as we are going to go ahead and wrap up our presentation for this afternoon. I do want to kindly remind everyone that you will receive that follow-up email that Randy mentioned that contains the important items. It includes a recording of the session, and we provide that to you so you can share it with other family members, friends, colleagues, or anyone that wasn't able to attend today, or just so you can go back through and take notes and make sure that you got all those great information that Jill and Randy shared today. It also contains that SurveyMonkey link that's in the chat box as well, just so you can complete and redeem your free strategy session. I also just want to reiterate that you can call our office at any time if you have any questions regarding that strategy session or any other questions about your unique situations. We're always happy to chat with you. I would also like to invite you to stay up to date on our upcoming events on our website. And we will also be having an in-person dementia focused workshop on Thursday, December 1st. So the information will be on the website and it will also be included in that follow-up email that you will receive. So one last call for questions. It doesn't look like there's any coming through. So with that, we're going to close down and thank you all so much for your attendance today. Thank you so much, Jill and Randy, for sharing.
Thank you, everyone.